Hello, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started, even though a few people may be joining a few minutes late. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Elizabeth Kinney, and I'm the Manager of Research Specialist Team at Advanced Research Computing, better known as ARC. I would like to welcome you to the ARC Digital Research Infrastructure Information Session. Before we start our session, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the University of British Columbia sits on unceded land. Megan, thank you. The UBC Vancouver campus is located on the traditional ancestral land of the Musqueam Nation, and the UBC Okanagan campus is located on the traditional ancestral land of the Salix Okanagan Nation. Next slide, please. A few housekeeping items before I turn it over to our presenter. We have muted all of the attendees as you joined. We will be holding questions at the end of the information session. At that point, we can unmute you if you wish to ask the question verbally. During the webinar, you're more than welcome to ask your question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will either answer the question directly there or hold it to the end. I would like to now introduce our presenter, Dr. Megan Meredith Lobe. She is a Humanities and Social Sciences Research Specialist for ARC. In addition, Megan serves on the Compute Canada Humanities and Social Sciences National Team. She holds a PhD from the University of Cambridge in archaeology, where she used a variety of computing resources to investigate virtual landscapes in late Iron Age, early medieval Scotland. Megan worked at the University of Alberta, where she supported research computing for the Faculty of Arts, and at the University of Oxford, where she was a program coordinator for Digital Social Research, an Economic and Social Research Council project to promote the advancement of information and communication technology and social science research. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Megan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. So move that slide here. Thank you all for coming today to this session in the strange digital void that is Zoom. I appreciate it. As Elizabeth said, I'm Megan Lobe, the Humanities and Social Sciences Specialist here at ARC. We have a lot to cover today before everyone glazes over and starts checking email, so I'm just going to dive right in. As Liz said, throughout the whole presentation, feel free to pop any questions into the Q&A. We have all of the ARC staff on standby, ready to answer any questions you may have. And if something comes to mind after the presentation, please do reach out to ARC, get in touch at any time, and we would be delighted to hear from you and talk about any of the other services that we'll be discussing here today. So what are we going to talk about today? So brief overview. I will introduce you all to UBC ARC, if you aren't familiar with us, and talk a little bit about all we do for the research community at UBC. Hopefully you will see something in there that you find useful. I'll talk a little bit about the National Digital Research Infrastructure Landscape, Compute Canada, because it is quite important for understanding how and why UBC digital research infrastructure is with us now, and what gaps in provision that we in ARC hope to fill. In the second part of the talk, I'm going to go into greater detail about ARC's digital research infrastructure, specifications of our two main systems, what they support generally, and how you can access these resources. There have been a number of changes to how we provision the resources on our sockeye system. So I'll go into more detail about those. Finally, we're going to open the floor for questions. But once again, throw a question into the Q&A at any time and someone will be able to answer it. So who or what exactly is advanced research computing? And more specifically, what is digital research infrastructure, DRI? These are two terms that I'm going to be throwing around a lot during the talk, so I just wanted to define them quickly for those of you who may be unfamiliar. So the ARC team, or the Advanced Research Computing team, is an institutionally dedicated service for researchers across all disciplines of Vancouver and Okanagan campuses, focused on delivering DRI, digital research infrastructure, to support researchers using advanced computing. That all sounds a little bit circular, so I'll pull it apart a bit. When we talk about advanced research computing, we're talking about the researchers with computational needs that generally involve big data, large computational power, modeling, visualization, machine learning that cannot be handled by a standard desktop. On the other hand, you have digital research infrastructure, which is the infrastructure's people, services, and platforms that support researchers doing advanced research computing. So you can think of the ARC team as the people bit of the digital research infrastructure. And as we go on, I will fill in more details about those services and platforms. So ARC is the people part of the DRI that supports ARC. See, it's easy. Moving on. So moving on to the main event, we have built out some very exciting digital research infrastructure to support researchers doing advanced research computing. So why? What is the context here? Most of you are probably familiar with our existing national HPC platform, Compute Canada, which will be transitioning to be known as NDRIO, National Compute Canada Organization, National DRI Organization, pardon me, in the next several months. And Compute Canada is a not-for-profit organization that provides DRI for researchers across Canada. Through Compute Canada, you get access to compute and storage resources, a default of about 10 terabytes of storage, access to CPUs and GPUs, as well as a resource allocation competition yearly for access to larger resource requests. And if you haven't done so already, we really encourage everyone to get a Compute Canada account to try out their services and consult with ARC if you have any questions. We're sort of the Compute Canada support team at UBC. So if you're at all interested in looking into Compute Canada, let us know and we'll help. So this is sort of in a very small nutshell what the national DRI landscape is. But there are a few things that Compute Canada is not well suited for, some gaps that some researchers were falling into. And these gaps sort of help explain the role and the importance of sockeye and Chinook, two words which I'll be saying loads in this talk. So the main goal of ARC DRI is to increase UBC's computing and storage capacity and really to complement the resources offered by national DRI platforms, not to replace, but to complement by filling in some of the gaps that some researchers might find themselves into. While sockeye and Chinook aim to support the entire research community at UBC, there is a particular focus on new UBC researchers, early career researchers, researchers working with sensitive or controlled data that perhaps cannot leave UBC. And these are groups that sometimes have a hard time accessing the national platform, either because of timing or because of data security issues. So again, sockeye and Chinook are not intended to replace the services of Compute Canada, rather to complement. So there are also specific circumstances in which sockeye can act as an alternative to the national platform as well. As I mentioned briefly before, for research projects that involve sensitive or controlled data, health data, data regarding Indigenous peoples or knowledge, or any data that cannot be hosted at a national site that needs to be kept at UBC. Sockeye can help fill that gap. So looking at, we saw these gaps and we wanted to fill them up. And so the slide here shows you sort of the evolution of the UBC ARC DRI over the last few years. The ARC team itself has been around since 2015, but it wasn't until June of 2018 that we received the first transfer of funding from the university to build out digital research infrastructure to support researchers who needed help accessing resources. With this first funding, we built the Sockeye General Purpose Computing HPC cluster, which launched in October of last year with small standard allocations. I'll explain what those are a bit later. In April of this year, the first larger allocations went live just as we were all going home. And in the meantime, additional funding came to ARC and we started to build the Chinook object storage platform, which launched on Monday, which is very exciting. And so far everything is going well. As you can see, as of today, Sockeye has facilitated nearly 7,000 core years and 40 GPU years of computational work for UBC researchers in this short amount of time. So what else does ARC do? Briefly, the digital research infrastructure, so those would be our big platforms, Sockeye and Chinook, which I'll talk about in great detail. But there are other things that ARC does. Expert advice and consultation is one. We have a number of discipline, domain-specific research specialists such as myself, a vast amount of technical experience. So we offer consultation and advice on how to apply for HPC hardware for your CFI. We do a lot of CFI consultations and also tri-agency consultations if you're going to be integrating a lot of technology into your research. We can help with what sort of software should I use to do X. And we have bioinformatics specialists, humanities and social sciences. We have fisheries and oceans. We have health data specialists. We have chemists. We have all sorts of expertise here, a huge range. Research data management. This is becoming increasingly important for researchers as the Tri-Council starts to unveil plans for requiring data management planning for research grants. So we work very closely with the library and other units on campus to offer training and advice on research data management, how best to wrangle your data and to make sure that it stays secure and findable and reproducible and all of that. Data privacy and security. We have an entire team dedicated to helping you keep your data safe, help you keep it secure, navigating the world of cybersecurity, if you will, to make sure that your research results stay safe and secure. Research platforms and software. This is another team we have who's dedicated to sort of providing and running the services that sit on top of our DRI. So something, for instance, like the RedCap that we run through ARC and manage that instance. Training, education, and outreach. This has been a big part of what ARC does, especially over the last few months. We ran a very successful summer school, HPC summer school. We're currently in the middle of running a series of research data management workshops with the library. We'll be offering some training in commercial cloud computing later in the fall. So a lot of training, a lot of education. The outreach piece, if at any point you would like someone from ARC to come speak to your department, to your faculty, to your students, even to your research lab about the things we do, if you would like us to go into more detail about any of this, reach out and we would be absolutely delighted to come speak. The next two slides are just us really showing how well received our DRI has been over just the last year that we've been up and running. The pie chart shows the breadth of faculties and institutions across UBC Vancouver and Okanagan that have used the Sockeye system, and it's a very good stretch. There are some heavy science users, of course, but we have users across the board. We've awarded 161 allocations across 16 faculties. 304 unique users have accessed Sockeye. Again, Sockey's facilitated nearly 7,000 core years and 40 GPU years of computational work, and an increasing number of attributions in research publications and presentations. And here are just some very nice things that people have said that we're very proud to show that we're definitely enabling research. This is a system that's been well received by the research community at UBC, and we're very pleased to welcome all of you here, and hopefully you'll find these systems very helpful. Okay, on to the main show. It's now time to dive into the fish tank, so to speak, and really look at the details of the ARC digital research infrastructure platforms, Sockeye and Chinook, how to access them, what resources you'll be accessing, and the benefits for you. So the three main components of the ARC DRI ecosystem, Sockeye, which is general high performance computing cluster, CPUs, GPUs, project storage, low latency latencycy out scratch space. We have the Chinook storage platform, which is object storage. It's accessible through Globus. And I know the cloud is probably going to excite a lot of people. We won't be exploring that in this presentation, but please do wait for more comprehensive information coming in the next week about pilot projects, introducing public cloud to researchers, as well as training sessions for researchers who are excited and interested and want to explore commercial public cloud for their research. Let's see. So we're going to start out with Sockeye, which many of you are probably already familiar with as users. Again, there are a number of changes this fall to how you access Sockeye and the resources you can access. So please take note of that as we go along. So the general specifications of Sockeye is here. I don't want to focus too much of them because we do have a lot of information to go over, and I want to leave as much time as we can for questions and discussion. So Sockeye, nearly 16,000 cores, 101 terabyte memory system, 200 general purpose GPUs. Storage on Sockeye, users are provided with 50 gigabytes of home space to assist their work. The home drive is obviously not meant to store data associated with an allocation. The project storage, this is the main storage space for your project, storing data, sharing data amongst your team members. And then Scratch, which is really meant for intensive read-write operations. It's purged of files if it hasn't been accessed in 30 days, and it's meant as your sort of temporary Scratch space. So one change that I want to bring up, one change for this round of applications is that applications are reserved for UBC faculty or PIs. Previously, students and staff were allowed to apply, but to manage demand and stay within the mandate of the system, it is now faculty members and UBC PIs only. And applications are prioritized for those who fall into those gaps that I mentioned earlier, such as new faculty to UBC who are not able to access Compute Canada because of timing, early career researchers, and those who are working on the sensitive or controlled data. If you can use Compute Canada, we still really encourage you to use Compute Canada. It's an appropriate system for most researchers, and you can do a lot with it. So come speak with us if you have any questions. If you're not sure whether to apply for Sockeye or Compute Canada, come see us and we can walk you through. So what does Sockeye support? Before we get too much into how to access it, it's worth talking a little bit about the types of research the system can support to give you a better idea of whether or not it will work for you. So Sockeye supports processing large data files, GPU accelerated machine learning jobs, research that requires processing of sensitive or confidential data in a UBC environment, and jobs that will benefit from parallelization, or large jobs that can be run in multiple sections. What Sockeye does not support are virtual machines, Windows applications, web servers, or very, very large jobs that require more than the available resources simultaneously. For those researchers who do need access to things like VMs, Windows applications, and web servers can still come talk to us at ARC. Because there are other resources that may be a good solution for you. There's the Compute Canada Cloud. You can come talk to us about our future cloud services, as these may be very helpful as well. So essentially, and one thing I really, really want to emphasize here is that if Sockeye or Chinook aren't helpful for you, we will try and find the resources that you need in order to get your research done. We are very good at connecting the dots. The DRI landscape at UBC is not just ARC alone, and we know it also includes UBC IT, things like EduCloud, Compute Canada, the library. It's a larger ecosystem, and somewhere in there, we will try and connect you to the right people. And now I am very pleased to introduce you all to the newest member of our ARC fish tank, Chinook. Chinook is an object storage system, which has been designed to specifically increase UBC's storage capacity and to supplement the storage resources available through Compute Canada. As you can see that with the specs, up to 20 petabytes of usable storage before geo-replication. We have 48 nodes across 2 physical sites in Vancouver and the Okanagan. 2,100 hard disk drives, more or less. It's accessed through Globus exclusively at the moment. What is available for researchers to apply for? So 5 petabytes are available for researchers after geo-replication. Multi-year allocations are possible, but they will have to go through an additional review process with our DRI Resource Allocation Committee, faculty committee. So similar to Sockeye as well, Chinook allocations are only for UBC faculty or PIs. And again, applications are prioritized for those who fall into the gaps I spoke about earlier, such as new faculty, early career researchers, those working with sensitive controlled data, etc. So what is Chinook good for? Well, the Chinook platform can be used to retain or retrieve portions of large research data sets composed of files, unstructured data, such as short or medium-term archives, collection and aggregation of results, copies of valuable data sets, staging of reference data sets, nearline storage. Chinook easily integrates with UBC Sockeye and using Globus for fast data transfer. Chinook is accessed again through Globus, which can be used for high-speed data transfer between Chinook, Sockeye, Compute Canada, many other advanced research computing centers. It can also enable data transfers between Chinook and your local computer if there are things on your local desktop or server, et cetera, that you want to store. Securely sharing data stored on Chinook with researchers and other research groups or at other institutions. So data sharing across research groups and automating data transfers between groups. So again, things that Chinook does not support: long-term archival data storage, simultaneous real-time collaboration and edit of data, storage of frequently changing data, and software applications that need fast input-output of data. So Chinook is not good for these. If you need to do any of this and you need support, please reach out. Our website is at the bottom of every slide. So data transfers on Chinook happen. Unattended data verification is on by default. If you have sensitive or controlled data that you want to store in Chinook, we will help to make sure that Globus is set up correctly to be in compliance with legislation and data access agreements. Your allocation will be the same, but your Globus account may need to be managed by ARC depending on sensitivity of your data. If you have sensitive data, please reach out to us for advice. So getting access. So now that I've given a rough and ready description of our HPC cluster and our storage platform, let's talk about how to actually get access to these things so that you can use them. So for the rest of the talk, I'll talk a bit about Sockeye allocations, what's new about Sockeye allocations, Chinook allocations. We'll look very quickly at the application forms, where to find them, what sort of information we're looking for, the review process, what are we looking for, how are these applications reviewed, onboarding, offboarding, finding the technical documentation, and then what happens after you're done and the end of your allocation. And finally, important dates so that you know when you need to do things. So probably of the greatest interest to many of you who are already familiar with Sockeye will be the changes that we've implemented this year that I have been hinting at a bit. I will go over these in detail in just a moment, but I first want to note a couple of things for our current Sockeye users who have received an allocation before August the 31st. So if you currently hold a standard or extended allocation, your allocation, which you probably thought was going to end at the end of March next year, is actually going to be ending on the June 30th. We have changed the timelines for allocations from fiscal year to academic year. I'll explain more in a minute. But anyone who holds an allocation that they got prior to August 31st of this year, your allocation will now be ending in June 30th, 2021. If you currently hold a standard or extended allocation and you apply for and are awarded a new standard or priority allocation, and I'll explain what that is, you will have to migrate your data and close your existing allocations. So we're really encouraging all existing allocation owners to keep their allocations as they are. If you're happy with your allocation, keep it as it is. You don't need to reapply for a new allocation. You keep your allocation, you keep doing what you're doing, and your allocation will extend until the end of June next year. Now, after this talk, if you think maybe one of these new wins might be better for you, reach out and let's talk about it, because it could be that one of the new allocations might work better for you. There are changes that could affect some research. So either way, let us know before you put an application in. And if one of these new allocations is better for you, then we can help work you through that. So what exactly are these changes that I've been hinting at so much? So with the standard allocations, the ones prior to August 31st of this year, an allocation was per research project. So a PI or a faculty member could hold multiple allocations, each for a single research project. So that has changed considerably. Now it is per allocation owner. So a faculty member or a PI can only hold one allocation at a time. And then that allocation, you can add users to it to share. But we are no longer allowing multiple allocations for faculty members. It is allocations are by faculty member. One allocation per faculty member. Previously, you had access to one CPU unit, which was roughly 50 core years, depending on how many people were using the system. That is now fair share access to CPUs and GPUs. There were no access to GPUs previously. Now you have fair share access to all CPUs and GPUs on the system. The 5 terabytes of project space is still the same between the old and the new. Again, the other big change is allocations can only be awarded to faculty or PIs. Previously for the standard, they were 4 calls per fiscal year. We have now, very excitingly, made these ongoing. You can apply for a standard allocation at any point during the year, whenever you need access. You can apply for an allocation. All allocations will end on June 30th, but we will give you notice that they will be ending to remind you to reapply the next year. But applications are being accepted and allocations are being awarded on an ongoing basis. Again, the offboarding was previously at the end of the fiscal year. It is now at the end of the academic year, June 30th. Project scratch space in our old allocation, you just received 5 terabytes, the same as your project storage. But this year, there's a bit more flexibility. If for some reason you need different project and scratch, we can work with you on that. So for those of you that had an extended allocation, these have changed slightly as well. They're now called priority allocations. Again, these are per allocation owner. So a PI or a faculty member cannot have multiple allocations. It is per allocation owner. Before, there was some rather complicated math in terms of how many CPU units, GPU units, up to 120 terabytes of storage. We've simplified all of that for our researchers. And so now it is a matter of increased priority on our system. So your jobs will have increased priority, will run faster, and you can apply for up to 50 terabytes of project storage for your priority allocation. Again, these are for faculty members only. 2 calls. Previously, we had 2 calls per fiscal year. We'll now have 2 calls per academic year with, again, allocations ending on that 30th of June. Project Scratch and project storage space can be different depending on the needs of your project. Like the extended allocations, priority allocations are subject to review by our faculty resource allocation committee, who we call DRI. So you want a sockeye allocation. Of course you do. So the application forms, what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about the process, and then we'll look a little bit at the actual application forms themselves, because they differ slightly for a standard or for a priority allocation. So the application forms can be accessed on our website, arc.ubc.ca, not the fitness center, the other one. Allocations are granted to faculty member PI, and who can then request users. One application per PI would be accepted. The applications are reviewed by ARC staff for technical feasibility. Will your project actually work on our system, or are you asking for something that Sockeye cannot accommodate, such as a web server or Windows application of some sort? For the priority tier, these applications do require additional review from the DRAC with final approval from the VPRI. That is the same as our previous process. And then you will be onboarded. All allocations are active until June the 30th, and you will receive notifications outlining your allocation and invited to add extra users. So I will shut this down quickly and move here to, yes, so these are our application forms. They're accessible through the ARC website. So they're a little bit different than they were previously. There's a lot of great information about how to fill it in, how to save and return later. The information is fairly usual. Contact information we're looking for. What is your faculty position? Institutional emails only, please. We can't accept Gmail, Hotmail, those sorts. They do need to be institutional emails. Questions about, are you an early career researcher, new to UBC? General affiliation, designated contact. This is, we ask for this if someone will be actually managing your application. So this could be your lab manager or a student who's the designated contact. The actual allocation owner must be the PI, and they're responsible for all the data and activity, but you may have a designated contact. Again, institutional emails only, please. And some questions around how will this standard allocation support your research work and projects. So rather than thinking about Sockeye in terms of a single project, think about how it will enhance and help your entire research portfolio. We will ask questions, do you have controlled data, such as something with the data sharing agreement? And also the highest classification of the data that you will be storing. This is around the data sensitivity, and we have put a link in here to the security classification of UBC electronic information, so you know at what level of risk, high risk, low risk, et cetera, that the data you'll be computing on Sockeye will have. We'll also ask about your other resources, whether you have access to Compute Canada, are you using it, do you have access to anything else? Because again, the Sockeye system and Chinook are really intended for a smaller group of researchers who might not be able to access other resources because they're new to the institution or to the academy in general, or they're using the data that simply cannot be held in Compute Canada. So again, if you can use Compute Canada, please do. Technical requirements. This is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of how are your jobs going to run on Sockeye? What do you plan on actually doing on the system? If you have any questions about how this works, what any of this means, you want some help with optimizing your jobs on our system, get in touch. We have an incredible technical systems administrative team who will help with walking you through the best ways of using the system. So questions around, and I won't go into this much detail for the next one, bound limitations, per job resource requirements. How many nodes do you need? What sort of memory? How many GPUs? Fairly standard question. How many files do you think you'll be generating? Software, list any of the software packages you need. We have a huge amount already on the system. There's a link here, so you can get into a little bit of the available software on Sockeye, and anything else, any other additional information. And then just clicking, you've read all of the terms of service, which I know everyone has in detail, which is great. And then confirming your understanding of data retention. So that's the Sockeye standard application. The priority tier is almost exactly the same. There are a couple of extra questions just to help us drill down a little bit about why you need the extra access. So 21, explain why you need increased access and why a standard allocation will not suffice. Fairly standard. And again, questions around what type of data, the use of Compute Canada, technical requirements as well. These are the same. Software requirements are the same. And any other additional information to really support your application. And back to this. So that is Sockeye. And for Chinook, very similar process. You access the application forms through our website. Allocations are granted for faculty member. Applications will be reviewed again by ARC staff. They may require additional review from the DRAC depending on demand, balancing demand. And allocations are active for at least 1 year from the date of your allocation. And rather than having to reapply every year, there will be an annual review report that researchers will be asked to fill in, and you can renew your application. This annual report will entail things such as, are you still using all of the storage you asked for? Do you need more storage? How is your allocation working? Those sorts of questions. It would be very similar to the annual report that you fill out for Compute Canada for those who do that. And back over here again, we will look at the allocation. This is the form for the Chinook, which again is on our website. Same, the usual information. Who are you? What's your email address? Where do you work? Faculty, designated contact again. And specific to Chinook, how will a Chinook allocation support your research work and projects? Data restrictions, data requirements, and this is important for us to know in case we need to help set up Globus in such a way that you adhere to all legislation. Other data storage, are you able to store this data on Compute Canada? How much do you need? How much storage do you need? And this is really dependent on your research, specifically the amount of resources that you will need to store. The more you ask for, the more likely we are to need to review it with our faculty review committee, again, to manage demand for the system. But it is overall a very simple application. And then back here. Okay. Again, applications will be reviewed by ARC staff, may require additional review from our DRAC. Moving on, what's next? You've got your allocation, you're ready to go, you're ready to start using our system. How do we do it? How do you do it? So you visit the ARC website for our technical documents wiki, which is fantastic and has a load of information, quick start guides, all the technical details about how to run jobs, how to schedule jobs, documentation on using Globus for Chinook, wealth of information, and always reach out. Again, I keep saying it, but please reach out. We have about 40 eyes on our ticketing system to really make sure that we can answer questions as quickly as possible and get you up and running. At the end of allocations for Sockeye users, you will be notified at the end of your allocation with sufficient notice to remind you that the allocations are coming to an end, and if you want to continue, you should reapply. And those who are not reapplying will need to remove all their data from the system in 14 days. For Chinook, you will be contacted near the end of the allocation again to and invited to renew. And as I said, this renewal is contingent on completion of the annual an annual report. So some important dates to end on. Last slide, hopefully you will remember this slide. At the very end of August, we're accepting applications for Sockeye standard allocations at any time. You can apply. You can apply during this talk if you want. That's fine, no problem. So our calls for Chinook allocations and for the new Sockeye priority allocations opened on Monday. So you can go ahead and throw in an application for either of those. The call for the Sockeye priority allocation will end on October the 16th. So you've only got about 3 weeks, so get the applications in. Our first group of Chinook users applications will be onboarded late October to early November. Because it's a new system, we're still working on our processes, but within late October to November, we'll begin onboarding those who have applied for storage on Chinook. And then in the middle of November, our new Sockeye priority allocations will begin. And all allocations for Sockeye will end on June the 30th, as mentioned before. And finally, that is it. Our email, if you have any questions, if you want to reach out for a consultation with any member of the ARC staff, you can find us at arc.support@ubc.ca. Our website is there. And we have 15 minutes for questions. I've been seeing lots of them pop up on the screen as I've been talking. Hopefully we can answer a few more right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I want to thank you all very much for coming and listening.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to go ahead and unhide some of the other ARC staff, and then we do have some open questions, so we can answer those live, as well as maybe touch on some of the more common questions that were asked, and any questions that the attendees have that they want to ask verbally, please put up your hand virtually in the Zoom, or go ahead and ask the questions in the Q&A. So I will just, there's a number of us who are here from ARC, happy to answer questions.
So maybe I will start, if you don't mind. There was this one question about, 50 core years and priority access. I just answered that I will try to make a few comments online. 50 core year limits for the standard allocation is a kind of a baseline for the Compute Canada systems, which are much larger than Sockeye. So I don't think that 50 core years is the limit. In my opinion, the priority access, priority ask is more dedicated to people who have some kind of a deadlines or need some extensive amount of resources for a short period of time to finish the paper, submit it. Other than that, I still believe that, a standard fair share of usage, if you have a kind of a very regular work, consistent submission, the standard allocation should work perfectly fine for you. Does it answer your question?
Are there any questions that anyone wants to ask verbally, or as I mentioned, feel free to put a few more in the Q&A box. See, we have one hand. There you go, Kazan. There.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions, and it's just so our lab primarily works on like bioinformatics data, and some of it is classified because it's clinical data, but we're not looking for so much compute powers. It's just that the files that are generated and that are being used are fairly large, and we need to sort of share them with collaborators or researchers that are not at UBC right now or are doing follow-ups or basically outside of the province or maybe in the States. So my question was, is the sockeye and Chinook allocation just you have to get both, or can you just get the Chinook storage option?
Yes, you can get on the Chinook allocation, pure storage. And with the Globus tool, sharing will be basically out of the box.
Wonderful. And my other question was, so again, it's high performance computing, and for example, like a lot of the softwares and toolkits that we use, they need to be installed, or they come in like installations. So the high performance computing cluster, the sockeye, how does that work? Would we have to contact somebody if we are having issues with getting the right tool to run the program? Because the program itself needs the computing power, but we have to install it typically in the local virtual machine or the server access that we are granted. So would we have to set that up prior with Globus, or is that just done in the background? Like how does that?
Globus is a file transfer mechanism. That's moving data, accessing the data. In terms of the software, basically contact our mailing list, arc.support@ubc.ca, and we will work with you.
Okay,
we will create the appropriate modules, and we will work together with you. If this is something which can be created in a virtual environment like Python virtual environment, we can also lead you with this process as well.
Okay, thank you. That was everything. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There's another question. Someone put up their hand. I think you're muted.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first, I want to thank you. So I'm starting. I started using sockeye from I think April, and I've never had any like bad experience with it. It was amazing. No long waiting time or anything like this that I previously experienced in Compute Canada. So I'm wondering now that the priority allocation is introduced, is it going to change the waiting time for the ones who have a standard allocation, or it's going to be the same?
That's a good question and difficult to answer.
Okay.
We will try to do our best to manage this. However, since right now we can till that moment, sockeye was not fully allocated, right? Since we have these calls for the allocation, and we've allocated so many resources, we still have a little bit of breathing room. Right now, on this ongoing process of onboarding people, we will definitely have more jobs, so the queue time definitely can increase. But
okay.
we as a team, we will try to do our best to make this as fair as possible and not to overcomplicate things. But that's a difficult question, okay?
Okay, thank you. And can I ask one more?
Sure.
if a PI is granted by an allocation, and if they want to reapply for next year, is it somehow guaranteed that they're gonna get the allocation, or it depends on the pool of applicants? Or
So I can take this one. As far as sockeye allocations go, you do have to reapply annually. There is no sort of shortcut renewal, so it is not guaranteed that you will get another allocation. And like you said, it does depend on the pool of applicants. So if, you know, the next time that the allocation cycle runs and you apply, and there happens to be, you know, 200 faculty members that check off higher on our priority list of who gets allocations based on those measures we mentioned earlier, like early career, control data, all that type of stuff. If there's too many of those, then you may not get another allocation, depending on how things work.
okay, thank you.
It's also important to note, you know, we've definitely positioned this as an augmentation to the resources supplied by Compute Canada and not an alternative. So you'll see that there are sort of requirements in order to get a sockeye allocation. You know, outside of a few, you know, first term oopses, the general expectation is that you have applied for a Compute Canada allocation, and even if you don't get it, you know, we want those people to be set up on Compute Canada and running jobs there. In order to maintain a short queue for everyone, obviously, if all the researchers at UBC who currently use Compute Canada decide to run on sockeye because of its nice short queue times, we'll very quickly have the queue times that are similar to those you see in Compute Canada. So I think we really just need to make sure that everybody's using all the resources available to them.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. Thank you.
We have another question in the Q&A box. Sorry, I don't understand the priority queue part. Do we need to make a special request to get this priority access? Is the priority access available for GPUs? My jobs are mostly GPU based, and lately I'm seeing a waiting time for my jobs. Thanks for all of this. Ryan or Roman, do you want to cover that?
Yes,
Oh,
I can try. You see, GPUs are in a big demand, and right now, currently, for the last couple of days, we are exercising a little bit of this priority access. We were asked by one of the research groups from the Vancouver Prostate Center to basically have a dedicated time on our system for a period of 2 weeks roughly. And they are running quite interesting COVID-19 related project. So for the next 2 weeks, yes, GPUs will be a little bit in a shortage. After that, it should be more or less as we were doing this before. Yes, if you have some kind of a code or a project which needs a permanent access to the GPUs, yes, asking for the priority access to the GPU will be definitely considered.
And you can access that through applying for the priority tier. So it's a separate application process, and that's on our website.
And it looks like there's one more question in the Q&A. Is there a way to request allocations where job wall time for some jobs can be more than the default 7 days?
I will answer this, and the answer is a short and sweet no. Because basically that's a system-wide parameter. So if we need to avoid the very long times, because very often we have to service the node or we have to do the maintenance of the entire system, and this will be very, very difficult. However, if you have some particular job which needs extension of the wall time, drop us an email, but this will be done and we can extend your wall time, but please don't do this on a permanent basis. I would rather suggest make your code checkpointing. So you can checkpoint, you can always restart your calculations from the from last iteration or something like that. If unlimited wall times, that's basically incredibly difficult. and this is not a good practice in the HPC environment. Assume that you are running for 168 hours and you don't have any checkpoints, and basically we have a hardware failure on this node. Your entire simulation is basically gone and you have to start over. So I will rather invest the time and energy into the checkpointing a code, saving your simulations periodically, and restarting this when the wall time expires.
I think it's worth noting that the wall times are there to protect the users of the system as well, right? It does need to be available for everyone, and you can easily think of the time or the situation where in an unlimited wall time, somebody who's not that experienced with running jobs could essentially use your entire allocation and penalize the future jobs of everyone in your lab, for example. So it's more than just a system management utility as well. It does sort of cap the damage you can do to your own quota as well.
Thank you. It doesn't look like there are any more questions at this point in time. We would like to thank, oh wait, maybe there is one more. Oh yes, I'll unmute. Nasom, is that correct?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for providing us this opportunity for asking our question. I currently use a Compute Canada Graham HPC, and I was wondering to know if we use a software which is not in the list of the software that you guys offered in Sakai. So what should we do? And should we ask for installing the software, or I don't know? What should we do?
Yeah, so if you already have a socket allocation and we don't have the software installed that you'd like to use, you can request that we install it. If it's commercial software, you will need to bring your own license. So say if it's, like ANSYS or Console or something, you may need to, or you will need to have a license somewhere to run it yourself. We will not provide licensing for that. But generally speaking, yes, we will install the software assuming it is compatible with Sakai in an HPC style environment.
Oh, thank you. Because
if I can make an addition to answer Ryan provided, we are still working on deploying the CVMFS from Compute Canada. And as soon as this is done, basically all the software which is available on the Compute Canada systems will be available on Sakai.
Oh, that's great.
So
Thank you.
that's a work in progress. Most likely it will come pretty soon. In the next couple of months, we should have this CVMFS, Compute Canada CVMFS file system mounted on Sakai, which will give you the access to the basically full Compute Canada software stack.
That's good news. Thank you. Thank you very much. And another question is, for example, in Graham, when we want to use it in the job, we specify the number of nodes and the number of cores that we want to use in each node. So how is possible in this new software? I mean, in this new HPC Sakai. Can we know how many nodes can we use, or the limit of the cores that we can use in our group?
So please look at our documentation. If someone can post this in the chat, I will appreciate that. Sakai basically has a mixture of GPU nodes, and all our GPU nodes have 4 GPU units per node and 24 cores.
Okay.
And in essence, there is no limit here. And then we have 2 computational platforms. One is Skylake based, CPU is Skylake based, so this is 40 cores per node. And the other one is, Cascade Lake, which is 40 cores, and Skylake, which is 32 cores per node. Again, if there is no limit. However, if you ask for all the possible nodes, your queue time will be definitely very, very long. And if you need many nodes, yes, then priority ask priority application will be definitely something to consider.
Great. Thank you so much.
Right, but altogether we have something like 460 nodes. So that's, as Megan said, this is roughly 16,000 computational cores. And we are sharing this between all the UBC community, right?
Yeah, thank you. Because the reason that I ask is last month I received a message from Graham that they reduces the number of cores available for our license from UBC to 32 cores. And I was wondering to know why it happened. So maybe there is
I think that this is a license issue. It's very
Yeah.
possible that you basically the software, which software are you using?
ANSYS Fluent.
ANSYS Fluent. So I will suggest to contact CMT. I believe that's where you are having the license from.
It's the license.
So
itself
basically,
is-
whoever provides you the license to the ANSYS Fluent software, you
Yeah,
have
it's
to talk to
UBC.
them what is the limitation of your license agreement.
Yeah, okay.
Because in essence, neither Graham or Sokai will limit you to 32 cores. There is no such limitation.
So it depends to the license and, for example, UBC that provide us that license. Okay. Thank you so much.
So we would like to thank all of you who attended today. We will be posting this video shortly on our website. And as Megan mentioned and the rest of us, please reach out to us if you have any questions. If you want consultation, we're happy to meet and chat about your research. Again, thank you very much.